In this video, I'm going to talk about 10 harmful effects religion had on my life. This being just 10, and I plan to make more videos on those topics in future videos. Also, I have to start by saying that this is my personal experience with religion, and it may or may not be so different from your experience. I'll start with indoctrination. This is what first comes to mind since I was raised in church from the time I was adopted at 5 weeks old. Indoctrination is harmful because you're not taught critical thinking skills. You're not taught how to think for yourself. And even if what the adults were teaching me was true, I wouldn't be believing it for good reasons. Lack of critical thinking skills leads to believing in anything, really. I mean, from flat earthers, anti-vaxxers, to this.
All of this with the global warming and that, a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax.
To quote Richard Dawkins from The God Delusion, one of the truly bad effects of religion is that it teaches us that it is a virtue to be satisfied with not understanding. And if you do think for yourself or question anything about the ideas that are being forced on you, you're shamed for that. See this video for more. 2. Being terrified of the idea of hell. This fear lasted for years, and even after I realized I didn't believe in a hell, that fear still lingered. I eventually overcame that fear, and if you'd like to hear me talk more in depth about how I overcame that fear, you can see this video. Next, not knowing how to grieve. I treated death as if it wasn't real. I thought it was just saying goodbye for now, but we'll see each other again soon when we're all in heaven. I also thought of this life as something that didn't matter. All of my concern was focused on the next life, or the afterlife. Eventually, it got to the point where I was comfortable with the idea of dying for my faith, if that was something I needed to do. My first encounters with death was when I was too young to really understand it. I remember when my grandparents passed away when I was very little. I think I was around 6 years old, and when my grandparents passed away, I was told that they went to a better place, heaven. Family pets died when I was a kid too, and I specifically remember digging up my dead hamster 3 days after we had buried him in the backyard. I waited 3 days to dig him up because that's when Jesus rose back from the grave, so I thought my hamster would do that too.
Sweet zombie Jesus.
This was my reasoning when I was a kid. When I recovered the box my hamster's body was in, I found a very startling image. Just imagine for a second, digging up your loved dead pet, finding the box it's in, lifting the lid, and then seeing all these worms and bugs emerging from inside of its body, eating it. Yeah, we're gonna get dark. I was going to include a photo here. I just typed in worms on decaying animal. Don't do that. Next is sexual shame. What religion doesn't participate in sexual shame? Shaming people for being sexual at all.
Baby, yeah. When I get that feeling, sexual.
I realized I was bisexual when I was 27. I'm now 30, and that took a long time for me to accept. I think part of the blame lands on religion and just being around people who were homophobic and not accepting of others if they were anything but straight. I was also molested as a kid for many years, and that alone made me feel very worthless and guilty because I thought it was my fault. I thought for so long that there was something horribly wrong with me. Now let's add another layer of shame with the help of religion. I remember kids in my youth group would take purity pledges at Jesus camps each summer and also at different church events, and I think this started when I was around 11.
This is just a reminder. Keeping yourself pure is important. And so you keep that on your finger, and it's a daily reminder that you're, at this point, you're married to the Lord, and your father is your boyfriend, and we're gonna have fun together.
Fuck this shit, I'm out. Fuck this shit, I'm out. No thanks.
Even if I wasn't bi, and even if I hadn't experienced sexual abuse when I was a kid, the harm religion added to my life in terms of sexual shame was damaging. Author Linda K. Klein recently wrote a book about her experience with the evangelical purity movement, and she was interviewed recently on the Fresh Air podcast with Terry Gross. Unfortunately, I can relate to a lot of her story. Aside from the last 7 minutes of that podcast, it's as if she's telling a part of my story. And that's horrible, but I think so many women and girls can relate to her story. Why is God so concerned with other people's sex lives? I mean, this is coming from the guy who said,
"Open thy mouth wide, and I will fill it."
That's what she said.
That's my joke. Damn it, Dwight.
5. Thought I was never good enough for God. That's just it. I never felt like I could live up to God's standards. And this led to low self-esteem. I mean, when you're told on repeat, you're a sinner and unworthy and you need to be saved, you're flawed, you're not good enough, you're broken and need to be fixed, you're weak and in need of another's strength, and that if only you had enough faith, then you'll be truly saved and escape eternal damnation and hellfire.
You God, not today, bitch!
Even after leaving the faith and not believing in a God, the effects of low self-esteem is hard to break. Next, ashamed and angry for being female. I spoke about this in a previous video titled Indoctrinated and Molested, My Story, but something I didn't mention in that video is I grew up feeling inferior to boys and men. I thought I was worth less than them and that I should be submissive and docile around them, and this leads into number 7, not using my voice. And this still affects me. Special thanks to these verses. I also thought I was the cause of other people's sins. I felt that I was causing men or boys to sin with lustful thoughts if I wasn't dressed properly. I mean, at Jesus camps, it was the fingertip rule. On a missions trip outside the US, it was skirts to the ground. The sexual abuse I went through definitely added to this way of thinking. I thought I was causing the abuse to happen. So, I started dressing in baggy clothing. Moving on to the last 2 points. I don't know if they are direct effects of religion, but they are the result of the effects that I previously mentioned. Low self-esteem, indoctrination, shame, etc. Without religion, I'm not sure if I would have felt this way. Suicide thoughts. And that was all right with me. I didn't think that this life mattered. I also became suicidal when I was trying to leave this Christian college I was attending. I thought, if this is how life is, then I'm done. Again, you can hear more about this story in this video. And finally, 10. I used self-harm to escape a cult. And unfortunately, you can still see the scars on my forearm. Again, I talk about this in another video. I'll put it over here instead this time. I share about my experience of going to a Jesus boot camp when I was attending this small Christian college in Griffin, Georgia. And I would love to hear from you. If you're someone who's currently suffering from the harmful effects of religion, or maybe you just have questions, or you're thinking about leaving your religion, maybe you would just like to talk with someone, I will put some very helpful resources down below. You need to know that you're not alone and there is help.